Hey, hey. Ese. Hey, yo.
Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to the CTO Forum. Really excited to kick off our first theme for the day. We're going to start by talking about the era of multi-cloud. So please give a huge round of applause for Scaleway CEO, Yann Lechelle.
Good morning everyone. You have time? We are going to take 5 minutes, apparently. So, tap dancing? Or not?
We'll take 5 minutes and then we'll get started. Okay. Grab one more coffee. Okay. Thanks everybody for some patience. It turns out launching a live stream on 4 different platforms simultaneously, not so easy. So welcome everybody at VivaTech on all of the YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, MySpace, Foursquare platforms of the world. Really excited to have you guys here. As I was just saying a few minutes ago, really excited to kick off the first edition of the CTO Forum live at VivaTech. Our first theme for the day is going to be the era of multi-cloud. I cannot think of a better person to talk about this than my sparring partner for the last year on all things multi-cloud. Please give a warm welcome to Yann Lechelle, CEO of Scaleway.
Good morning, everybody. So we're going to start off the session with a little exercise to set the mood. So first question, do you think Scaleway is the best cloud provider? If you think so, raise your hand. Okay, I'm impressed. Now, you guys from Scaleway, you're biased, right? As you would. Now, the question is, do you think that there is a best cloud provider? Think about it based on your needs and your use case. Think about this best cloud provider for you. You have it? Okay. Now, is this cloud provider that you have defined as best cloud provider, is it the best cloud provider in terms of cybersecurity? Is it the best cloud provider in terms of sustainability? Is it the best European cloud provider? Is it the best cloud provider in terms of paying taxes and bringing back some of the financial gains into the local ecosystem? Right? So these are the questions that are fundamental to this session, because the notion of best has to be redefined. It is no longer as simple as it was before, and I'll explain why. So today we're going to talk about multi-cloud and choice. So let's dive in to the era of multi-cloud, because now multi-cloud is a thing. So a quick word of introduction. Scaleway, of course, is a cloud provider, but Scaleway is embracing this notion, and I'll explain why. So, creating choice is something that we do because we believe that it brings value. If we understand that, we can participate in this economy. If we don't, as a decision maker, as a developer, we therefore do not embark in this notion of creating choice. So, the multi-cloud is here to stay, and this is why. Let's step back over the past 20 years. These companies, these use cases could not be achieved 20 years ago. In fact, recently we had the pandemic, and because, and thanks to technology, we were able to switch from in real life to being, confined at home. The pandemic was actually acceptable because we had technology. This technology has been built over the past 20 years. Use cases like booking a doctor, using a transportation that is shared. The shared economy has taken off because of technology. And also in terms of marketplaces, all of these use cases are possible today, were not possible 20 years ago. They're possible at scale because of the cloud. The cloud is what made it possible over the past 20 years. Now, we talked about the digital divide 5 years ago. It turns out that today, 80% of the population worldwide has access to these technologies, these enabling technologies, 80% worldwide thanks to the smartphone. But that doesn't work without the cloud. The cloud is connected to every single use case that lives in a smartphone. Therefore, the cloud is an enabler, and it's a massive transformation. And if you work in the cloud, with the cloud, you know this very well, it has creating a paradigm change. So these companies, Doctolib, BlaBlaCar, Content Square, and many others will be speaking today because they will tell you about their use case, about their problems, their scalability issues, how they use open source and other solutions to actually address the problem. But we need to look at the 20 years behind us and how the cloud has enabled something and see where we are today. Now, in terms of market share, this is important because 16% of the European market share is provided by European players. And I'm talking general statistics, right? And in terms of cloud solution providers, IaaS and PaaS, only 2% of the 16%, so 2% out of 100% in Europe, is provided by companies that you know, Scaleway, OVH, and that is a problem because the market is skewed, provided by players that are non-European. The market is not balanced. That's a fact. The question is, how did we get there? Why is it so unbalanced? Is there something wrong? So, just look at the stats. The stats are staggering, and here we're looking at France. In France, 70% is controlled, the market share is controlled by 3 players, all of which are Californian. No offense, Liam. Love California, right? But California is very good at this. California creates players that have national, international, global ambitions. They execute really well. But Europe let this happen. And we are in this situation today because we let it happen without paying attention to the balance of things. So this situation, I believe, is not acceptable because of the imbalance, not because there's something wrong with those players. There's nothing wrong with them. Actually, they're pretty good. You should check them out. I think they're pretty cool technology. But the problem is the imbalance in this equation. Further is this equation. Here we talk about French tech. And we should be proud of the French tech. The French tech companies are represented here, right? The French tech 120, the next 40. These companies are supposed to be the future of our economy. They're going to be creating jobs. They're going to be capturing value. But the problem is that the foundation of these companies is based, and this is public information, on a technology layer that comes from the US, right? 75% with one single cloud provider. So that is a problem because what happens when there is a geopolitical context, just like what happened with Trump, the US, and Huawei? Trump invalidated the Android license overnight. What happens when there is such a thing? This is what I call a risk. It's a geopolitical risk. It is a risk management. It's a financial risk. And it is something that doesn't scale, basically, as a nation, as a European construct, and, of course, globally, because these companies need competitors as well. And they need competitors with a different mindset. So that is part of the problem. Again, nothing against AWS. Again, it's a great company. We look up to them because they create great technology. But the equation doesn't stand on its legs because the French tech cannot depend solely on one foundation. In fact, if we think macroeconomics, the US mindset is very interesting to study. There is an article in the US Chamber of Commerce that says Europeans are starting to bother us with their regulation because they're preventing us from capturing finance and revenue from the European market, and therefore they're preventing us from creating jobs in the US. So the US is thinking that technology is a way to bring money back to the US to create jobs in the US. European mindset is not there yet. We're like, oh, it's an open market. Come, red carpet, right? That doesn't work. We need to think about the value creation. So this is a picture representing what's happening. We have currently a mindset where we are fine with this, and we should not. There is a sort of tornado, and I'm not just talking about the cloud. I'm talking about this ability for Silicon Valley to create this center of gravity, this tornado, this vortex that captures data, revenue, jobs, value creation, innovation, all of which is actually creating imbalance, right? We have to talk about our trade balance here. This is macroeconomics. So what do we do to actually rebalance things? The center of gravity should be in the middle of the ocean. Here it's dead center in California. It doesn't have to be in Europe, but it should be in the middle of the two. So let's look at the situation today because things have changed fundamentally. 3 things happened recently. First, there is Trump's America First. it's a radical change of policies where the US is now firmly positioned to make sure that they remain first in front of China. Europe is a side consideration. So we are a natural partner by virtue of the war, Second World War, and by virtue of the legacy that we have with the US. The US, the United States, was founded by Europeans. And then the US saved us from Second World War and therefore created the European construct in some ways. So we have a joint destiny. But still, Trump changed the game by saying America first from now on. And then we had COVID. Europe realized that it was not able to produce masks. And then the war in Ukraine, which at our borders means that we need to think about what the European construct, what Europe means. What do we want from Europe? So as a result, these three perfectly timed events have redefined the cloud as we've known it, which has been the evolution of on-premises and then private cloud, and then the single cloud, which has become a myth, a lie and a fallacy. The single cloud is no longer the right answer to your needs. It is not sustainable because overnight they can pull the plug for any given reason. And that is not acceptable for your businesses. It's not acceptable for France as a nation. It's not acceptable for Europe. It's not acceptable for your children because we are creating value here. So today, we are entering the era of multi-cloud. Multi-cloud has been around as a concept for a good decade, but it has not been applied because it is a little bit more complex, right? As a developer, you need to think about compatibility, what is the common layer between the cloud providers. You have to think about access and revocation rights, and you have to think about load balancing, and you have to think about end user choices. That's complicated. Nevertheless, today, multi-cloud is here to stay because we need to look about this stack. The stack here is precisely what we're building at Scaleway. We're building the foundation layer, but we're also building products that make multi-cloud possible. And multi-cloud is this stacking up of things. And if you look at the data, in fact, my previous companies, I was using 3-4 cloud providers already. But here, 80% of the use cases are just fine with 20% of the products. So if you enter this mindset, and if you think that multi-cloud is a solution for your needs, then you can participate in rebalancing the equation in a way that makes you an active participant in the future of Europe, in the future of France, in the future of your company. Again, risk management, choice in terms of pricing, choice in terms of data regionalization, choice in terms of what your clients accept or do not accept. And in some cases, they also have a say in terms of GDPR and so on and so forth. So the multi-cloud is a construct that we invite you today to discover along with all the other topics, open source, talent retention, training, CI/CD, all of these considerations that make your daily lives as a CTO. So I wish you an excellent day today at the CTO Forum within VivaTech. We're very proud to have brought the technology track to VivaTech. It has been a long dream of mine because VivaTech should not be just about marketing, but it's also about tech, the underlying technology, without which nothing works. So this is your day. Make the most of it. I hope the viewers online take advantage of it as well. And one last thing, just a heads up, we're going to be operating this track at the Open Source Experience Forum in November. So if you can scan the QR code or check the website, you can still submit your conference propositions, right? And I invite you to attend because open source is also an instrument that allows to create multi-cloud because it creates a level playing field. So with multi-cloud, you can actually work with multiple cloud providers because there's a common understanding. And it is an essential part. So we're very happy also to participate in this event. So see you in November. See you today around the talks. And I look forward to the next speaker. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, moving right along. Thanks, Jan, for opening up the day. Really excited for our next talk. Let's jump right into it. Please welcome on stage Stephen Leroux, CTO of Clever Cloud, and Gaspard, VP Product at Scaleway. Give him a round of applause.
Morning, Stephen.
Hello, Gaspard.
Morning, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
So, Stephen, I think you heard it correctly. So, Jan said more and more people are keen on, and clients are more and more keen on knowing where their data and where their application runs. How do you feel that? Do you agree with that consideration?
Yeah, I totally agree. He's really right. We see a lot more of customers coming to us asking actually where are the data. Not especially which data center, it's not very fine-grained precision location, but they want to be ensured that it's actually at least in France, maybe Europe, and it's a recurrent question that we wouldn't see months and years ago.
So it's kind of
new,
something new, people taking into consideration the place and the location where the data is consumed.
Exactly.
And from a technical perspective, so how do you address at Clever Cloud this multiplicity of clients that want different location for their data?
Well, first you have to understand maybe what is Clever Cloud and the different strategies that we have to deploy Clever Cloud, because there is a Clever Cloud in public cloud, but you can also have Clever Cloud on-premise, or in a hybrid fashion with the data plane on-premise or in a remote cloud, for example, on Scaleway. And you can still keep your control plane in the public cloud. So you can just stick an execution workloads, servers on your own cloud, on your own infrastructures. And then we connect all this together, so at least you only choose, okay, this application, I deploy it on this cloud and this one on this other cloud.
So you're basically saying that you're already in the multi-cloud era in somewhat.
Yeah, actually Clever Cloud owns its own infrastructure, but we can sit on different other clouds, and then we connect all them together. And so yeah, it's kind of a multi-cloud for real, yeah.
So you're able to offer a multi-cloud offer to your clients, and what were the technical challenges for you to be able to deploy in a multi-cloud way? How did you approach that?
Yeah, maybe there are two things. The first one is how you deploy a full region that you need to operate, because it's very different to deploy the data plane, for example, or just scheduling jobs, etc. But to be able to deploy all your control plane, all your web console, all the management that is packaged in the offering, because when you deploy on-premise, we only intervene just to manage the solution, but there is no further access, and it can be in very special deployments, for example, in Secnum clouds or this kind of deployments. So there is a lot of restrictions on network flows. So you have, first of all, to package the solution, to be able to deploy it, and Clever Cloud has been built in order to be deployed. So it's a very minded
so
packaging. Yeah.
That means from the beginning, your company was built so that it can be deployed in any cloud provider, and
exactly
that is the
second point is the networking, because there is no magic, and since security is for us a very important point, we actually create an overlay network on top of other networks that by default cipher and encrypt all the traffic. So the Clever Cloud private network, for example, can connect different clouds. So you only see one network, but maybe you can have a Scaleway, you can have AWS, as we mentioned. And it's a very good strategy to get rid of also or move from a cloud to another cloud. Yeah.
So in a nutshell, you say you need to have clever deployment strategy. You need to have a strong network strategy to be able to deploy on the cloud. So it means that as a PaaS provider, you're abstracting all this complexity so that the client can just say, I want to run on multiple infrastructure.
Exactly. Well, this is actually the mission of Clever Cloud. We won't do 100% of what a cloud provider can do, but we want to be the Apple of the cloud. Maybe we will only do 90%, but it will 90% very easy for everyone. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about cloud abstraction, there is something important we notice at Scaleway, is that usually we have different types of clients. So in the cloud, there are clients that are like heroes. They know everything about infrastructure. They know everything about the last technologies. As opposed to people that are new to the cloud. They know more or less nothing. They just, I want to deploy my application and so that it runs and I don't have to care about it. How do you see this maturity and how does that evolve in a multi-cloud paradigm?
Yeah. So maybe it's important to have the global picture of evolution because we initially built applications so that they were aimed to run on-premise, on the server, etc. And the move to the cloud has been done in the lift and shift fashion. We take these applications and we put it on the cloud on infrastructure. Then now applications are evolving, not all of them, but most applications and most developers are evolving in their way to develop on the cloud. So they embrace what we call the threat factors, so that application can be set stateless, they can be deployed multiple instances, so that they scale well in the cloud.
So more or less coming from a monolith to microservices for cloud natives?
It's a different problem. Microservices is more a hype or a fashion today. Maybe a way to have a fine-grained granularity in your development and to be quicker, faster in iteration. But you can have a big application that actually answers the 12 factors. If you don't have the state, for example, 2 weeks ago we deployed an application that was absolutely not compatible with cloud. You cannot run 2 instances of them because it locks the database, etc. So disaster. But our product is actually thought of for this kind of application, so we can be compatible to deploy only 1 instance of them, etc. So this is the part of the lift and shift. We have to adapt to run these applications, but you will have a better experience with applications that are developed for the cloud.
And are your clients becoming more and more mature with that with those concepts?
Yeah, sure. Because we also go higher in the stack, with high-level value product. For example, messaging as a service or this kind of stuff. When you only use a topic as a service, you don't have to run your own cluster, for example, your own Kafka cluster. So we abstract many different stuff so that they integrate these services and this logic. So yeah, they are kind of evolving. Also, we see that many of them even don't want to get rid of hardware constraints. They don't want to be able to I need a database, how much CPU, how much memory, I don't care. I just want it and it have to run. And same for my application.
So we're more or less talking about serverless here.
Exactly. So serverless is, to me, the next step of the cloud development. Not in the sense of only Lambda or this kind of stuff, but it can be serverless compute or serverless storage, for example. Or you only get data in with APIs. But even for compute, it can be your traditional application that you just put, but you don't have the constraint to think what's the scaling model of my application, what number of CPU do I need, what kind of memory. You don't care. Push it. We will learn for it, and we will scale it as you need.
And according to you, is that compatible with multi-cloud?
Sorry?
According to you, is that compatible with multi-cloud?
Yeah, sure. Maybe the perfect example is how we enable disaster recovery. What we're working on is that if you want to enable disaster recovery for your app, you only just to click. And when you click, you can select the remote cloud And what we do behind is we schedule this application with a sleeping size, so it's not costly at all. And we create an asynchronous replication on the other cloud of your choice. And we will make it possible to test it in real time. So it's kind of a rocking real-time disaster recovery.
So a pure example of multi-cloud.
And simplicity.
And simplicity. As expected, this was way too short, Steven. I guess we're going to welcome someone else on stage now. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. A lot to pack into a 10-minute conversation. So as we open up the conversation about multi-cloud, we hear a lot about opportunities. We're hearing about past companies already bringing the multi-cloud to customers. I see two really interesting conversations to have, and I have two really amazing speakers to talk about this. So to talk about removing barriers on multi-cloud compatibility, please welcome Miriam, the CTO of Outgrow, and Emmanuel, a PM at Scaleway. You good?
Yeah. Thanks.
No problem.
Yeah, sorry about the logistic here. So thank you, Miriam, to be with us. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So you're a CTO at Outgrow, and you have been for 4 years, actually, and even been working at Outgrow for the last 14 years or so.
15.
15, wow.
Yes.
Looks like a long time. So I get that at Outgrow you manage and actually build project and product for a large quantity of customers in a very different business areas and with very different kind of issues. So what is the overall, if you have to summarize, what would be the main pain points that your customer have regarding their cloud infrastructure?
Okay, so thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Mariam. I'm the CTO of Outgrow Technology, and Outgrow is a consulting company. So we are 1,000 consultants today, and we work with our clients to adopt the cloud technologies, and we help them to go and to move to the cloud. We have a lot of companies and clients in different sectors. And I think that the concerns depend on the size of the company and the nature of the company, because the concerns are not the same whether if we are working with a startup or a scale-up, which is cloud native, and it's not the same for our banking systems, our industries, etc., who have a lot of luggage and a lot of cultural luggage and technical luggage. So the concerns for these kind of companies, I think, is that when talking about the cloud, we very quickly come up with hybrid cloud. And hybrid cloud comes with a lot of and a bit more complexity than when we have only one public cloud. So this is the first thing, that we have to look at the cloud with the vision and the why, what we want to do with this cloud, what is the value that we want to leverage with this cloud, and which topology we want to choose. Is it hybrid cloud? Is it multi-cloud cloud, etc.? So this is the first thing: defining the vision, defining the why, and the right segregation and architecture that we will implement with this cloud. So this is the first thing. The second one, and I think it's the biggest issue today, or the biggest concerns for our clients, is the cultural gap to take advantage from the cloud and the multi-cloud and hybrid cloud, because we can have new tools, we can have a lot of capabilities with the cloud, but if we continue to have the same processes, if we continue to have the same culture, it's really difficult to leverage and to get value from the cloud.
So basically, you're pretty much also helping the companies and the customer to actually move to a new cloud infrastructure culture, to get away from what they had before and to move into what's going to be next and what is the best solution for them.
Exactly, because it's also about how teams will be able to create their own infrastructure capabilities, how they are able to go faster and to deploy with their own, without having necessarily creating a new ticket or waiting for another team to let them to deploy, etc. So it's also, and it's almost the most important thing, it's removing barriers between teams and empowering the development teams.
And when going into that cultural approach, how do you actually address problems such as sovereignty issues, data protection, which is like kind of very hot topic at the moment,
yeah.
And not obviously easy to manage with an IT solution using a public cloud?
Yeah, that is really a very, very big concern. And we are facing this more and more with our clients. And I think that's the first reason why we have a lot of hybrid cloud and we have multi-cloud is the data sensitivity item. So we work with clients in industry and public institutions also, because we work 50% of our clients are from public sector. So it's really a very big point for us. And the idea is to determine with precision and to be accurate on what is the level of the sensitivity of the data that we are implementing and we are using, and then determine the right architecture, the right cloud the right cloud provider and the right topology that we will use. This is really a very, very important point.
Okay, great. And so basically we often talk about lock-in when you talk about cloud for infrastructure and the different kind of technology that you might use. And the topic here is that when you actually want to serve a customer that has specific need, you need to focus on its need and the problem that you want to solve, but you have to choose the right technology that might be a lock-in solution.
Yeah, that is a very good point, and I talk about this with all of my clients. First of all, what I want to say is that we focus most of the time on the vendor locking, but there are a lot of kinds of locking, in fact, because we can be locked to a technology, even if it's an open source technology. We can be locked to kind of skills. We can lock to a lot of things, in fact. So there is a very good article from Martin Fowler. I don't know if you know it. The title is "Don't be locked by avoiding vendor locking." So it is the first thing is be aware that it may be we can have other kinds of locking also. So this is the first point. Then I think that the good question is not whether if I want to be locked or not, but the question, the right question, according to me, is what is the right level of locking that I can accept, and what is the trade-off that I can accept in my organization and in my architecture. So, for example, if I want to leverage the cloud, the public cloud, maybe and go fast and develop a lot of applications, maybe I can use managed services and very high-level services from a specific cloud provider. Then I will be more locked in with this specific cloud provider. On the other hand, if I don't want to be a lot of locked with a specific cloud provider, then I will not use very high-level services, function as a service, managed services, etc. I will use maybe a IaaS or a Kubernetes or a managed or containers, etc. And maybe I will go less faster than if I use other services. So the question is, what are the trade-offs that I can make, and what are the consequences, and also if I have to change, maybe if I use a public cloud with high-level managed services, maybe on Amazon or Google, and if I have to move because regulatory question, what is the cost to change, and will I be able to change very quickly? This is, I think, it's architectural approach that we have to adopt when we talk about the cloud and multi-cloud approach.
Yeah, so we really want to use a maximum of standards application that we can actually. We don't have to train everyone again on new technology, and so it's easier to actually use a solution that we actually need. But as you said, there is not only the vendor locking, it's the technology locking, and we have to remind ourselves that even open source technology, like open source, is a business model. And it kind of brings that lock in terms of you have to have the knowledge and the ability to actually manage those infrastructure. You have to keep the knowledge of how to use the technology, and you have to train your teams regarding to that. And that's kind also of a kind of open source lock-in, which is kind of weird, actually.
Yeah, of course. And it's a trade-off that I think most of a lot of companies do that choice and that trade-off. I think it's a good point. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess to choose the infrastructure at Octo Technology, you basically are looking for the best compromise that you can have for your customer to find a good solution. And so you do that approach of whatever provider it is, whatever solution it is, if it is the right solution for you, just take this one. But like, it doesn't not matter really much where it is. Like, what matters is that it actually fit your needs.
Yeah, exactly. This is a very good point, because from the majority of our clients, in fact, there are some tooling that can help to reduce the complexity inherent to the hybrid cloud or the multi-cloud. First of all, I think that we can leverage and we can mutualize some open source tooling, for example, Terraform or technologies like this, to manage the complexity of deploying infrastructure. Even if for each cloud provider, the infrastructure, the network is different, the paradigms are different, but I think that we can mutualize and we can capitalize on this kind of skills in the company. Two other things that can help to reduce this complexity. First is using or relying on platform as a service from the open source community, because it is natively more multi-cloud compatible than other kind of platforms or services which are related to one cloud provider. And we can have other APIs or other tools. For example, in Scaleway, you have a very good service which is a load balancer, which is multi-cloud. I think it's really an initiative that help our clients going more and more in the multi-cloud and reduce the complexity. And it's the same also with the Kubernetes service, managed service, which can be built, I think, and deployed on other cloud providers. So this kind of initiatives, I think, can reduce the complexity and can help our clients going more and more to the multi-cloud ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mariam, for your time. I think time is up for us. So, Liam, stage is yours again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much. Of course, take it. I'll let you do it yourself. Okay. Very cool. Really great way to start the day. Thanks everybody for coming out. We're having a really good time. You guys enjoying your day at VivaTech? You enjoying the CTO Forum? Let's hear it. For all the people on YouTube, for all the people on Twitter, on MySpace, on Friendster, listening from 2002. You know, when we started putting this conference together, we asked a lot of the engineering leaders inside of Scaleway, inside of our customers, in our community, you know, what were the topics that they wanted to hear from, what could we talk from? And even though we opened up on one of those topics, which was the multi-cloud, the barriers to adopting it, how it's actually happening today, we can really see how all these topics are interconnected. We've already talked about open source. We've talked about culture inside of companies. Miriam was talking about the cultural lock-in and the organizational lock-in. And one of the biggest topics that we heard back from engineering leaders is talking about managing talent, retaining talent, bringing in engineers into your organization, helping them grow, helping them evolve. And when I set out to build a theme around managing talent, the first company that I contacted was Malt. And it was a company that I really wanted to bring them out and have them talk about how they deal with talent. I wanted to see a talent marketplace talk to us about how they think about organizational challenges and organizational structure. And I'm really excited to have a bunch of great speakers here with us today. We've got a lot of really good topics. And this event really wouldn't be possible without our speakers. So please give them all a huge round of applause, and of course give our next speaker a huge round of applause. Please welcome up on stage Benoit from Malt. Yeah.
Hi everyone. I'm very, very happy to be here and talk about something a bit new for you maybe, or it's not something we used to talk about. It's about people management. Okay? So we are going to talk about what is an engineering manager and how we at Malt hired engineering managers. The first question is, what is a good software engineer? That's one of the first questions I ask to candidates when hiring engineering managers. Most of the time they get surprised by the question and they are not prepared to this question. And this question is a bit difficult somehow because, you know, good is not a very good word. It's not really meaningful, right? So if they are getting stuck, you know, I try to help them and say, and rephrase a bit the question and say, what do you expect as manager of a successful software engineer? Okay, and this applies to data scientists. This applies to many different, you know, types of software engineers. Okay, so candidates at this step, they say, you know, they refer back to the basics, I would say. You know, to go back to the safe situation and say, okay, let's talk about tech. Let's talk about hard skills. You know, their ability to deliver code, their ability to go fast and so on. The ability to learn new languages, to learn new frameworks. Good. Okay, that's the starting point. And, you know, I try to get more information. So they refer to soft skills, you know, the ability to communicate, the ability to work as a team and so on. That's good answers, you know, I'm happy to have those answers. Then I ask a second question on what is an excellent software engineer. So the guys that, you know, gave me everything at the first step, they are a bit stuck. And I really would like to have, you know, good feedback also at that point. So I try to help them again and say, you know, guys, think about the best software engineer you ever met, the best software engineer you ever, you know, collaborated with. What made the difference, you know? And so people, you know, they start, some of them continue talking about soft skills, about communication, about all of that. Others, you know, they start talking about value they bring, you know, value that software engineers can bring. They can start talking about business. They start talking about many different things. And I'm really happy to have those kind of answers. And finally, the last question of this series of questions I ask usually is, as an engineering manager, how do you make a good software engineer become an excellent software engineer? And that's really the purpose of this talk this morning. So my name is Benoit Guillon, and I'm VP Engineering at Malt. For those who don't know Malt, we are a marketplace that helps companies find the best freelancers to work with. So we do not, on our side, work only with freelancers to build Malt. and we have a real engineering team with permanent contracts. But even though, we bring the opportunities to freelancers to find also on their side the best clients to work with. So it's a power of choice. Okay, so we are very proud to have, two major strengths at Malt. The first one is the community of freelancers that we built so far. So we are close to reach 400,000 freelancers connected in Malt. And so it's huge already. And we are operating now all across Europe. Okay? Our second big strength is our product. So we are a tech company. We built a product from the beginning of Malt. Okay? And today, our product, our website, and all these features is really a key differentiator for us. Because, we managed to remove all the frictions that could exist between, a freelancer and a customer when they're trying to work together. So about contracting, about payment, about, all the things that may retain you as an employee to become a day a freelancer. Because, you may imagine, how can I get my next client? How do I manage payments and so on? And so really, that's what we're trying to do. So we are an ambitious company as well, and we're aiming at, having 1 billion euro of projects running through the marketplace by 2024. We are proud to be part of the next 40 list of companies this year, and so it's really amazing. I joined myself like 2 years ago and a half. 3 months before the COVID crisis. I think I chose the right moment to join the company. And at this step, Malt was, I would say that freelancing was already a big trend, okay? During the last 10 years, the 10 years before I came, freelancing, already doubled in France. So it was already a big trend. And so this COVID crisis really changed something in the way, we perceive ourselves, the relationship we have with employment, the relationship we have with our company, because we mixed up everything. We mixed up life, the work life, family life, everything together. And so we wanted to have more flexibility somehow at this point. And we were looking for freedom and choice, okay? And so, very early, back in 2021, we hit a big record at Malt because more than 90,000 new freelancers signed up during 1 year in the platform. And that it was really, really amazing. And it showed up, how COVID also changed a bit the way we perceive freelancing now and how many people, have in mind to become freelancer. And meanwhile, companies also change on that because companies, they also figured out that, an hybrid mode can work, okay? And so, the way also they perceive their relationship with employees and with contractors can change also. So, to give you a bit of perspective, and it's a study that tells that by 2027, about half of workers in the US will be independent workers, okay? So that's where we are today. So given all of that, back early 2021, the CTO of Malt and co-founder Hugo came and see me and say, you know what, Benoit, get ready to scale because our business is scaling and we will scale. So the plan was clear. We are a tech company based on big product. So we will double our revenues in 1 year. We will double it again the next year. That's our business plan. We will double the team as well for the first year, and you will have to double it again the year after. So it was a big challenge, really, and so, I got ready about that. So the first thing is that, what does that mean? Scaling a team. It's really easy. It's mathematical. It's just arithmetic. You have to retain people, as Liam mentioned. It's one of the challenge. Retain people and hire new people. Yeah, it's quite easy, by the way. So here is an example. Okay, I'll take one example. So you have one team of 5 engineers, okay, they are good, you chose them, they are at a different level of expertise, okay, but you rely on some of them, that to be, I would say, like good leaders, okay, people that take the ownership on the product they're working on, okay, and so you say, no, I will try to scale this team, so let's start hiring new people, okay, so you choose the best, and you make them, on board into your team, ramp up, and so on, so that at the end you reach a certain size that you feel comfortable with, and you can split the team in 2 teams, okay? And so, done, easy. But the thing is that, meanwhile, something changed also there. The thing that changed is that, people, they level up, okay? You add 1 leader, and you need 2 leaders now, okay? And so you need to grow people also as you scale. And so, the simple equation becomes a bit more complex, because now you have to retain, hire, and grow people. And I also noticed, and I think that's key, keep it simple and keep going fast. Okay, so that's also the magic of scaling. So, to be honest, I think that it's a full-time job to do that. To retain, to hire, to grow people, and just focus on that is still a full-time job. And that's the role of engineering managers. So what we did is that, because we are tech guys, so we just we cannot work without building frameworks. So we built a framework to do that, to retain, to hire, and to grow people. And that's the career path we built. So we didn't, invent things, we reuse, we are engineers, so we reuse the things that work well. And so the thing that worked well is to have a scalable career path that, brings the opportunity for people who want to focus on management to really focus on management. So which means having an engineering management track for engineering managers. And meanwhile, have also a dedicated track for people who want to grow but don't want to be people manager. Okay, we don't want to put people management, as a must to let good engineers grow and become excellent engineers. So that's really key. And also we want to value, I talk about money a bit. We want to value excellent engineers as we value excellent managers. I think that's really important. And so to illustrate that, we also position the role of CTO at the top of engineering leadership, okay? Not only people manager, inspiring leaders, okay? So this scalable career path, we set it up, and the thing is that, this slide doesn't, okay, anyway. We set up, and the big part of it is really to define all the expectations you will have at different levels for different engineers, and it takes a lot of time, and it's a complex work. But at the end, if you have a look to how it works somehow, you can have, I would say, 3 layers, okay? The first one for beginners or intermediate people, intermediate experienced people, they will, focus on output, on their ability to deliver features, on their ability to become somehow maybe a bit predictable, to make good estimates. But, they will focus on the how to do things, okay? While when you are getting, more experience and you become to be a senior software engineer, you will start being a good partner with product management, and you will start, focusing more on the outcome. So on the value that you as an engineer create for the end users, okay? So, and the other step, the step above is really, to be aware of why we do that. And we do that for the sake of our company, for its growth. And so it's to be aware of business, the business of your company, and how, as an engineer, you can contribute to the success of your company. And really, the role of an engineering manager is to be able to adapt your management style at those different levels, and to be able to work, with more or less experienced developers on their output, to be able to work with senior developers on the outcome that they produce, and on tech leaders to also work on the impact they have on the company. So as engineering managers, really, your role is to maximize the impact of your team over the long term. This one is really, really important as well. So my takeaway for engineering managers, and I hope I have engineering managers here in the room, it's to empower your team, okay? So it means being able to adapt your style, your management style, to the different situations we saw previously, okay? And be able to, use empathy to really analyze situation and behave differently depending on the situation. That's something that when we hired engineering manager, we tested a lot, the ability to identify how should they behave. The second thing is that, and it's really obvious, but it's something that we saw a lot, unfortunately, please value outcome over output, Do not manage story points, please. Do not manage useless deadlines. Just manage, the value that your team will create, and also the value that the impact that this value will have for the business of your company. And also, we are always, I think that, we created somehow, or sometimes we tend to create Chinese walls around our teams to protect them from disturbance, okay? And my word to engineering manager is more, bring the 360 degrees vision of the company to your teams. And last but not least, my main takeaway for you as CTOs and the VPs and head of engineering is do not put people management, on the path of becoming excellent software engineer. The ultimate evolution of a software engineer is not people management. That's clear. In people managers, they are key to scale. So, hire them with caution, and be very, very, very selective in your hiring, and also create. As a CTO, I think that's your mission, to really create an healthy and demanding but transparent management culture in your teams. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Awesome. Lots of really great topics. I remember one of my good friends once told me the job of an engineering manager is to be a force multiplier. And I really loved that metaphor of how do you take a group of people and multiply the outcome and multiply the output that they have over the long term. So why don't we keep moving right along? I'm really excited for this next panel. We're going to be talking about hiring, retaining, and managing churn inside of organizations and inside of engineering teams. So please welcome up my panelists of speakers, Romain, the CTO of Open Classrooms, Caroline, the founder of the Alliance, and Evelyn, the CTO of Spleeo. Give them a huge round of applause. Right on time, everybody. Grab a seat. Caroline, you did not get the memo about wearing white on stage, I see?
I did not.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Well, in that case, first question is for you. Let's start with the beginning of the conversation. Let's talk about hiring. When I first started talking about this panel with you guys remember I said we want to talk about hiring and retaining top engineering talent. And Caroline said, I will not be on the panel if the word top is in the panel. So let's talk about hiring the right talent. So what are we looking for when we're hiring talent? What does it mean to hire the right people in an engineering organization?
So to this question, every organization is going to have a different answer. So my advice is always to try to think like a product people or marketing people, and to think about the proposition value that you are going to present to the engineers you want to hire. And every year, for instance, Stack Overflow releases a report on which you can see like the technologies that people are looking for, if they work remotely, if they are looking for companies hiring diverse talent. And based on that, you can build your proposition value. If you join my company, you'll get to work on this. If you come and work with my team, you're going to grow in this way. So before hiring, designing what you're looking for and being crystal clear about your speech, I think is what matters the most.
Yeah. Romain, you guys have been hiring a lot over the past few years, right?
That's right.
You guys have. How big is the engineering organization at Open Classrooms today?
The all technology team is around 130 people.
Okay. And when you guys are scaling up that organization over the past few years, as you guys have expanded to the U.S. and becoming very deeply rooted in France and across Europe, how do you guys think about recruitment? How do you guys think about bringing in the right talent for the right moment?
I think you have to put your the skill you're expected with a bigger whole thing that is your team. It's not like accumulated big talents. It's how you construct, complementary skills within your team. So there's no like a pattern from a top talent. It's a pattern for a top team that is diverse, different skills. But you have to work on common values and common behaviors that are really important. And I think top talents are generally people that like to learn, that have the right mindset, that is humble, and there's many soft skills. Top talents are maybe more about soft skills than hard skills at some point.
Yeah, it's funny because we have this myth or this notion of the 10x engineer. Last night at the dinner we had, someone said, I know I'm not allowed to say this, but we've got a 10x engineer in our team, and you've got this notion. It seems like, at least for you guys, the 10x element is a lot more about what you bring to the team as a whole and the mindset that you bring and the growth that you're trying to get out of that experience.
I think a 10x team is better than a couple of 10x engineers.
There you go. And Eveline, talk a little bit about recruitment at Spleeo. What is it like when you guys are trying to look for talent in a very competitive environment, trying to compete with a lot of companies, trying to recruit for people working on languages with very specific, very small talent pools? How are you managing to scale up the teams?
So it's more scale depending on the roadmap. We have two parts. The scale depending on how you want to structure your technical team. If you want DevOps, if you want automated QA, so structure. So a team that you build your structure to be able to build your team after. And after, regarding the different profile that we need, it really depends on the roadmap. And depending on the part of the application we want to grow, we will hire some different profile. So we have a really large technical stack, really different stuff, so it's difficult. But when we hire people, we told them that we will have different stack. And sometimes it's a challenge for them, so it's cool for them because they know that they will learn a lot of stuff. We told them that we have some legacy stuff also that are not so nice because we want to be clear and transparent on that. So we don't hide anything. We explain what we will have and how we will structure the team.
It seems like, it's good that you're honest up front. I feel like if I ever meet the CTO who tells me we don't have any legacy here, then I get a little suspicious. But it seems like there's, Benoit was talking about how scale is about hiring plus retention, and we'll talk about that. Plus, there we go. Plus moving fast at the same time. So it seems like one of the big challenges is how much do you bring on board the rest of your engineering team, right? You're trying to grow the engineering team in order inside a department or inside a specific squad in order to increase the output. But at the same time, you have to get them involved in the hiring process. You have to get them involved in the onboarding process. Yeah. So how do you measure sort of the cost of bringing a new person into the organization? How do you think about that?
Currently, we don't measure that, but we just record the number of interviews we have to do, and then it's a lot because to find one person you need to have a lot, and we know that so it's time during the interview and then time for the onboarding, and for onboarding it takes a lot of time too, but we don't measure exactly.
And Romain, do you guys have given your guys' familiarity with educating and onboarding, technical talents, do you guys have a structured onboarding for engineers? Do you try to bring them, and is that an intensive process? How much do you involve individual contributors versus engineering managers in that process?
Yeah, I think onboarding is maybe, the more I think about it, is maybe the more important thing you can do within a team, because on onboarding you have to think about what you want to teach to the newcomers, what is important in your team, and what is the culture, the values, but also the architecture, the technical things. So if you think your onboarding, actually you think the vision of your team, the principle of your team. So we do like really work on onboarding because it's working on our team and the principle and so on. So there's, like I mentioned, different axes to tackle it. There's about, pure technical things, and you have to understand the architecture, the deployment process, and so on. There's other methodologies also, like how do you manage tasks, rituals, and so on. But there are also the behavior and the impact that you could have, in the team, but also across all the company. So that's quite complex, more complex than we can thought at the first sight. But if you tackle it well, actually you just tackle what your team is actually. And back to your question, I think there's several times. There's the first week, the first month, the first 3 months, and that's different kind of information or capabilities or skills that you want, your newcomers to have regarding that. So obviously we measure a little bit, but we think that someone is like really fully operational after 6 months, more or less.
Yeah, I gotta imagine that Caroline, I know you work with a lot of companies bringing in talent, bringing in technical talent. I gotta imagine that what's expected of, say, junior engineering talent versus senior engineering talent can be very different. Do you feel like when companies go into the recruitment process, they have a clear idea of whether they need someone who's going to be fully operational in 6 months and solving big problems? Or do you feel like sometimes we know we need someone who can code in Python, it'd be great if they'd done it before, but if they just got out of school, that'd be fine as well?
This is a tough question, but yeah, most of the time, the companies I work with are scale-ups, startups, or like bigger companies. And what's funny is you can instantly spot the maturity of the recruitment sensitivity of a manager. Because, when they introduce a role, of course, for a VP of engineering role, I'm not going to suggest any junior. But when they're looking for, specific skills, I will always guide them towards, the right talent pool. And sometimes hiring someone who is, starting their career, or 2-3 years of experience is the right thing to do. You don't want someone who has too many habits. And one thing I would like to add is that for scale-ups right now, there is one tendency which I regret spotting, is that everyone wants people who are plug and play. They want the people with the right set of skills. But if you want to hire, do not hire people who have 100% of the skills you're looking for. Hire people who have 70, 80%, so that you can teach them stuff and you can retain them on the longer run.
Yeah, and that seems like one of the biggest challenges. Again, Benoit, I love this slide that Benoit had: scale, hiring, plus retention, plus growing people, right? Retention seems like almost even, when as a marketer, when we think about growing revenue, we know that it's more, it costs less to retain talent than to retain customers than to acquire them. So you really want to have good retention, and it's the same thing with talent, really. And Ramon, you were talking about when we spoke a few weeks ago. You were talking about how retention can kind of be a snowball effect. If you start to have people not staying, even if it's wrong recruitment, misplaced, we didn't quite know what we wanted, or the person didn't meet the expectations, it can start to create a bit of a snowball effect internally. Do we not know what we want? Is there something wrong with our company? And it seems like retention really can be a huge cultural impact on the company.
Yeah, definitely. I keep the quotes about marketing analogy. I do really like what you said about retention. And I think there's vicious circles versus positive circle. And retention is really this part, meaning the more you have people that leave, the more people will leave, and the more people stay, the more people will stay at some point. And you know, we mentioned previously that onboarding is a long effort for the company, but also for the team, because you have to bring some senior people to help them. So the cost of losing people is really high at some point within a company. So you have to take care about this circle. So it could be positive and you have to take care of it, but you know, the worst effect would be like someone starts to leave and then another one, and then you lose your knowledge, you lose your culture also at some point. And it could be like, you know, there's some company where this effect happened and it was like a disaster at some point.
Yeah, it's funny because when we sat down to talk about this panel earlier this month, you know, there were a lot of things that we were all generally on the same page about, right? You know, candidate experience and the need to grow people internally, the role that culture plays. And one of the big topics where I kind of saw that we deviated was on the topic of churn and talent churn. And Romain, you felt like talent churn was a failure of the company if someone leaves the company. But Eveline and Caroline, you didn't necessarily. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, so I don't want to do that. But for you, the retention is really important.
There's, you know, if it's top performer, you know, you could have churn if it's like low performer or there's an issue,
exactly.
Right? You have to because the quality of the team is not only the turnover. Because you could say, okay, oh, this team, there's no turnover, that's amazing. But if you, like, all the people are not good, bad culture, that's an issue, right? It's not always good to have no turnover.
Right, so I guess the idea is it normal for talent to outgrow a company? Maybe that's the right question. Is it a healthy thing for engineers to outgrow the company that they're in? Or is it the company's obligation to foster a place where they can continue to grow, right? There's really these two sides. Eveline, what do you think?
I had some trouble to hear, so I didn't.
I was saying, is it important? You know, is it normal for an engineer to outgrow the engineering organization, or is it a failure of the engineering organization to retain them? Right? Is it your job to make it so that all of your talent can constantly grow? Or is it kind of something that you have to accept that eventually people are going to move on and go on to bigger?
We have to accept, and sometimes it's a good stuff for people to get out to learn some new stuff, because you don't have, maybe you can't make people grow indefinitely, because maybe you don't have enough to feed the people. So they need to see something else. They need to learn some new way of working. Yeah. So it's a pity for you, because you build a team, you build a culture, you build a kind of family, and then someone leaves. But maybe it can be good for him and good for you, because then you will hire someone else and you will have some new skills, some new culture, and some new stuff to discover.
There was a document which was shared recently, you know, with all the mafia. I remembered because there was the CTO mafia who then created Lifen and so on, and you had different from, I think it was captain or chauffeur privé. So you can be proud of the people that you grew, right, and created companies afterwards.
Yeah, and maybe it's coming back to this idea of creating a culture of excellence,
entrepreneurship, and it's grateful too for the company to say, okay, I make people grow, and then they are able to create company, to create some, to hire people, to create jobs, and that's good. That's cool too.
Yeah,
it's a good culture.
And okay, well, so let's talk a little bit about culture. What role do you think culture plays in retaining talent? You know, we talk a lot about the culture of autonomy and entrepreneurship, and the culture of entrepreneurship can create talent that will then go on to build great things, and that's fantastic. You get these mafia creations. But what about keeping people inside the company? Do you think even in a hybrid, you know, remote work, asynchronous environment, that culture still plays a role in the way engineering organizations retain talent?
Yes, for me it's really important, because you create your culture, you create your way of working, a kind of mindset in your team, and you create link between people thanks to that. So it's really important to build your team.
I'm thinking about two examples from scale-ups. So one is TransferWise. They grew from 1 to 1,000, and they really, from the beginning, designed and defined their culture. So for instance, it's autonomous teams rather than autonomous individuals. So it helped them hiring and keeping people on the long run. And there is one example from the US, a company called Gusto. They went from 0 to 600 people, and I love this example because, for instance, they listed their inner traditions. Let me give you an example. Sometimes they have the no shoes day at the office. So, you know, when they were hiring people, they were like, would you feel comfortable if you see people without shoes, for instance? And then they design everything, the way the career paths were designed, the way teams were collaborating, the way the technologies were selected, and it helped them both hiring and keeping people.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, when I first started, 10 years ago working with tech companies, I felt like culture was about, it was about values. It was, we care about candor and grit and foosball, and I feel like as companies have matured, and as especially in the French ecosystem, as it's matured, it's become more about how we work, and it's much more pragmatic. It's a set of internal traditions. It's this is the way we do one-on-ones. That's our culture. This is the way we talk about success.
I disagree at some point for a couple of things. I think first, culture, wow, we mentioned it's important, and there's this famous culture, it's strategy at breakfast, you know this one. But the culture has to evolve also, because when you're a team of 10 people and then a company of 100 and then 1,000, you cannot say, oh, we have the same culture as before. You should have like big guidelines and being in the same spirit, but you can't be. And if you say our culture is about the way we're working, that's an issue because you have to change the way you work with the scale of your company. And maybe there were some rituals and things that you used to do before. You have to change it if you just, grow. So I think culture should be, in my opinion, more about values because they're really stable. Than the way of working. That should change a lot, especially in scale mode.
Yeah. What do you think, Evelyn? How important is culture in Spleeo for your engineering team?
For me, it's really important. It's part of a soft skill we check when we hire people, and my goal is to ensure that I have a team and not a group of people. So I need them to be collaborative, to be autonomous as a team, not as people. So we work, the agile part with the feature team is really helping on that because you create autonomous team and you create all the people share the same objectives, the same OKR, and they work on that, and the team need to reach that. It's not one person that needs to reach the objective, it's really the team, and I really insist on that to ensure that they work as a team. But when we have a trouble, I don't want one guy to take it and say, okay, I solve it. It's a trouble it's a team resolution, and it's a failure. It's a team failure, and we need to work on that too.
I love it. Making the team more than the sum of the individuals. Okay. Well, guys, we could talk about this for hours. We already have. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Please give Romain, Caroline, and Evelyn a round of applause. Okay, gang, moving right along. If there's one thing I know about engineers, it's they love a good product demo. They want to see how things work. They want to see things in action. I'm really excited to bring up our next guest. Please welcome Guillaume, the CTO of Refty.
This, yeah, that might help. Any slides? So hello everyone. So my name is Guillaume Gelin. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Refti. And I've been invited on the stage to talk about creating a great candidate experience for engineers in particular. So recruiting is hard. I think it's one of the hardest things that all companies have to master. It's hard. Just like when you can't find any candidate for that one position that should like leverage on your whole organization, or when you think that you finally found that one A player, but then she ghosts you and goes to another company. And it's even harder when you end up hiring these awesome MIT graduates, but then you realize that they're not the person you needed. So all in all, why is it so hard to recruit engineers? Because engineers don't care. If you're not called Google, Amazon, Tesla, if you didn't raise fund the last month, then they just don't care about you. They don't care about your job offer because to them, it looks like all the job offers. They don't care about your cold emails that's barely personalized because they receive a lot of it. And they don't care about your corporate video either because it sounds like any other corporate video. They don't care about your perks. In fact, they already have a lot of it, and they don't need more. And they definitely don't care about your 2 live coding interviews, your take-home project, and your 3 technical interviews. They don't care about all this because in a market where offer is lower than demand, you are the one who needs to care. You don't need to post a better version of your job ad. What engineers want is to meet inspiring people, to get to know them, and to grow by their side. You don't need to tell them about your perks. What engineers need is that you are the perk. You don't need to stress test the candidate with live coding sessions and whiteboard interviews. Most engineers have a lot of other engineers that can vouch for them, and they probably prefer you to read their GitHub pages and ask for their references. Or maybe not. Some of them like coding exercise. So you have to adapt to the candidate. Because in the end, it's all about the experience that you can provide to your candidates. Or rather, experiences with an S. Because that is what you should strive for, creating an unforgettable experience with your candidates. What experiences can you provide to engineers so that they will want to talk to you? What experience can you provide so that engineers actually like your hiring process? And like it so much that they will in your all other companies just because they're in process with you. And once they're hired, how do you make sure that the experience they live in is on par with their expectations? These are the questions that Refti tried to solve. Let me show you a few screenshots of what we do. Jobverse. A job fair in the metaverse. It looks like Pokemon. Candidates love it. It's fun, different, and they can see a real face to discuss from the beginning. Our first edition was yesterday during lunchtime, and we had more than 200 candidates. We plan to do one of these per month. Do you want to be in? Questionnaires. They are personalized with the company logo, pictures, and colors, and they take up to 10 minutes, no more. It's so simple that candidates can complete them on their phone, and with this questionnaire, you let the candidate tell you what he wants or who he really is. You can as well send a knowledge test that engineers won't mind answering because it's so quick to answer. I strongly believe that 10 to 15 questions is more than enough to assess any hard skill. Automated reference checks. Like I said, Most engineers would prefer that you ask their peers rather than putting them through a lengthy process. You just have to give us a name, a phone number, and an email, and we collect all the candidate reference in less than 48 hours. And while we are doing so, the candidate receives notifications and knows when a reference has been completed. The reference process is no more a shadow process. Finally, when it's done, we give you the most advanced report for your candidates. We cross-reference the data between the knowledge test, the questionnaire, the references, and the ideal candidate profile that you, as a hiring manager, can define. In the end, you only took a few minutes to your candidates, and now you can see where your candidates are a fit and where they are not. No more surprise once they're in. And if you want, you can send an anonymized version of this report to the candidates. With their FT report in their hands, they will learn so much about themselves that they will thank you that they were in process with you, even if you decide to stop the process. Our mission is simple: people first. We want to place the right people in the right position in the right company. And we hope that you will do this with us. Thank you.
Great job, buddy. Nice. Let's give it up for Refty. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So, moving right along, I'm really excited to welcome up, I'd say a good buddy of mine, but I think we just met for the first time this morning in person. But we've been talking for a long time, and when I knew we were putting together the CTO Forum, I knew I needed to bring Remy out. Remy just recently published a book, and he's been writing a lot on the topic of fighting complexity, and I told him, please come out and talk about how engineering organizations can stay simple as they scale. So please, without further ado, give it up for the CPO of BlaBlaCar, Remy Guyot.
Hello, everyone. So thank you for having me here. I think I'm the only product person today. So the way I look at it is, I think I'm going to start with a bit unexpected introduction. I don't know if you've seen this movie. It's a science fiction movie. It's a terrible movie, but it contains a very good quote. And I'm not going to go through the whole speech that Will Smith gives to his son, but it ends by a very important, a point, which is danger is very real, but fear is a choice. And so, if you actually take this concept and you, apply it to complexity, the way I look at it is that I think that complexity is very real in our world, but I think simplicity is a choice we can make. And so, this is what we're going to talk about today. So, I have a question for you. So this is the interactive moment of the session. I'm going to have you to pick a choice. A unicycle and a bicycle. Which one is simpler? So if you think the bicycle is simpler, please raise your hand. Okay. If you think the unicycle is simpler, please raise your hand. Okay, okay. Can you stand up? Yeah? Okay. Come on stage, 1 second. What is your name?
Robin.
So you think that this unicycle is simpler?
Well, it's simpler to build.
Okay, okay. Would you like to actually try to ride it?
I can try, but that's not going to be successful, I think.
You want to try?
I can.
Sure. You can use my arm if you want.
Yeah. I'm learning. Can I...
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Please a round of applause. So, I think this question, the only answer is, the question is not clear. Is it because the thing is, it can be simpler to build and very difficult to use, very complex to use, or it can be actually very complex to build and very simple to use. And unless you're clear about this very specific topic, you have no idea what conversation you're having. And there's actually a whole matrix. I've been thinking about this topic for a long time, and there's a whole matrix you can actually now look at, which is things can be complex for users and simple for you, or the other way around. The thing is, there's actually a whole quadrant, and we're going to look into this right now. So the key thing for me is that, of course, the best part is things that are simple for you to build, and they become simple for users. This, you should run for it, of course. On the opposite angle, there are things that you should, that are complex for you and for the users, you should avoid at all costs. And then there's the interesting in-between categories. And so the big bets are the things that are going to be the heart of your company, is where you digest the complexity on behalf of your users. It's because you actually take all the complexity in that you provide something very simple. Like a bicycle is a good example of this. There's a lot of complexity involved, but for a user, it's way simpler. On the opposite, you have the non-core things, things that are maybe things you should outsource because they're not core to your business. Now, you could think that this is another way of talking about your impact versus cost, but I think there's some dependencies, some consequences that we're going to look at it right now. So at BlaBlaCar, for example, a matching algorithm is at the heart of what we do. The way we match passengers and drivers that want to carpool is surprisingly complex, but for most people that use BlaBlaCar, it's the simple thing on earth. And for us, we take pride in this. Why do we invest so much in this level of complexity? It's because, that's the heart of our business. On the other side, we have a messaging system for people to, exchange messages with one another. This is not the heart of our business. This is something that, probably we should outsource because, we probably need market standard. We don't need to be innovative in this. An example of something we had before is that when a driver and a passenger were trying to, get a ride together, they needed to exchange a booking code so that, we could ensure that the trip happened. Turns out it was very complex to manage for lots of reasons, and people hated it. It was very complex. When do I ask it? Is it the right code? So for example, we decided to get rid of it. Sometimes, luckily, you have some projects that are actually, easy for you, simple for you, and for your users. A design system is a great example of this. It facilitates how fast you can build stuff, and it makes your whole application easier to learn. So what choices do we have? For the things that are the big bets, the things that are really strategic for your company, I think there's a couple of things that are important to have in mind. First, if you look at this matrix, by definition, this is where technical depth is going to come from. Like, it's not a surprise, it's not a coincidence, it's on the most important part of your stack, depth is going to come. Why? Because this is exactly where you're trying to absorb all the complexity. You're not putting it on the users, so it must fall somewhere. It's falling on your stack. So that's why, by definition, you need to explain to any stakeholder you could have in your company, there's a reason why this depth is happening precisely on the most business critical topic. It's because you're taking all the complexity in. The second thing is there's a concept called the curse of simplicity. And the curse of simplicity is that whenever someone is exposed to something simple, by definition, they cannot guess the incredible work that went behind it. Because if you create something simple, you actually erase even the work that was done. So it does mean that as a engineering leader, you need to praise the people that do the work that lead to something simple, because this work is invisible to everyone else in your company. So the more visible and the more complex work is leading to something simple, the more you're going to need to make sure that those people get rewarded, for this work, because most of their colleagues will never see the work that went behind it. Now, if we look at the things that are on the avoid corner, a couple of things that we did at BlaBlaCar. One thing is that we actually make sure that in all of our roadmaps, some of the items we have are about removing features. Sometimes you make a bet and you think something is going to bring a lot of value to users, and it turns out, yeah, kind of, but not so much. The tendency in any company is to kind of move on to the next topic and then the next feature. The problem with this is that you're actually, having what I would call functional debt. So things that are kind of, clogging your system. They're not highly necessary, but they're still there. One of those features is not a huge problem. As they accumulate over time, this is where you start to slow down. So make sure that in conversation you have with your product counterparts, some of the things that were, disappointment, things that were not performing as good as you were hoping for, you actually take them out of your product and don't leave them there. The second thing that we spend a lot of time on at Blackar is the features that are going to get on the roadmap in the first place. You should spend a lot of time simplifying them to the bone before you actually ship them, because it's impossible in the whole discovery process that's happening on the product and design side that they avoid all the simplicity because they explore things and they try stuff. Really make sure that you challenge your product counterparts to make sure that what you're going to ship is as simple as possible. And if you're interested, the book that Liam was kind to mention, called Discovery Discipline, gives a lot of ways for your product peers to think about how you can simplify a good feature. I'm not talking about killing things that don't bring value. I'm talking about making sure that your value is captured with the smallest amount of complexity as possible. About the non-core gradient, one thing you should be you should keep in mind is that if it's something that is not at the core of your business, the one key trap is that you're going to constantly have secondary use cases that you didn't address that come and nag you through customer feedback or clients that are requesting it, and you're going to have to need the discipline not to go after them because you can't afford it for your business. So that's why the second piece of advice here is that maybe the best thing you can do is outsource it for someone that actually is going to be able to make it a big bet. So, for example, if you think about Scaleway, most companies, they can't, make the concept of multi-cloud, a big bet. It's not the core business. Maybe you need to outsource it to a company that is going to make this particular topic a big bet. That's it for me. If any of this resonates, or if you think some of your product folks that you're working with would benefit some of this kind of complexity and simplicity matrix, there's a lot of that in that book. I co-wrote it with a designer, a VP design, now working on Malta actually, Tristan Charvilla, and that's it for me. Thank you.
You're telling me you're not going to ride the unicycle off stage?
I can try.
Yeah, can you show us? Should he ride the unicycle? Should he show us really quick? I got so excited after you telling me you were going to bring this.
I can, but the stage is imperfect, so I'm going to give it a try. I'll go on the floor.
Yeah, go on the floor. Okay, I'm excited. I just want to see. I want to see a little bit of unicycle today, and then we can go back to talking about. There you go. That is how you exit a stage. Appreciate it, Remy. Yeah, you can leave it there. Okay, please welcome on stage my next guest. He's right on time, Jean-Baptiste. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Here, join me in the middle. We'll take the middle seats.
All right.
Oh, I don't need this.
Yes, it works.
Perfect. There we go. Yeah, I was gonna talk a little bit about why we were going to talk about this. I had a whole transition, but why don't you do my job for me? JB, tell me a little bit about TEEDS, and tell me a little bit about what engineering entrepreneurship looks like at TEEDS.
Yes, sure. First of all, I have to say that since the beginning of the day, I see a lot of talks which are going to be very related to what I'm going to discuss today. And basically, I am Jean-Baptiste Pinguet, Vice President of Engineering at TEEDS. I've been there for 5 years. TEEDS is, to give you a little bit of context, it's a company that is now 1,200 people with 180 engineers located in France mostly. And in the last 5 years, we have managed to grow 30% year over year organically. So with no acquisition, and the revenue last year was about 670 million. And one thing which is very specific to TIDS is that we are in the ad tech market, and it is a very competitive market. So our competition is Google, Twitter, Snapchat, and we are trying to get money away from those guys. So as you can imagine, it's...
we can imagine.
It's a big thing. And think about it, like, so we have the big competition. We have all the regulatory changes, GDPR in Europe, CCPA in the US, right? We have all the industry changes. Third-party cookie went away with Safari, and then IP also got removed from tracking. So we have all these challenges, and since the very beginning of the company, we were built on a very entrepreneurial, from the engineering standpoint, very agile and quick to react to market. And as we grew and developed more and more features, we had to change and evolve our organization so that we can continue to innovate and to get market share while growing. And that is kind of why we had to do this driving the bottom-up innovation and organize ourselves to do that.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about that. I can appreciate, having watched companies like Criteo come up in France and TIDS as well, I can appreciate how a very competitive landscape can breed a requirement to constantly be thinking outside the box. What does that look like inside the engineering organization?
Yes, I think you need, it's three things. It's the most important is the people. I think not all software engineers are fitted to work in that environment. And I heard earlier that there is talent. I agree with that. And talents are attracted by different industries. For example, ad tech is a specific industry. Not everyone wants to work in ad tech, but it also has its challenges. And so for us, people means the engineering organization rely on three things. Mostly all our engineers are humble. It's very important. They also respect each other, they trust each other, and they care a lot about the business. And this helps us basically put the basis of the organization. And the next phase we've put in place is on the hiring. What we've done in the hiring is we have a culture fit interview where we make sure that the new people who are going to come to work for TIDS, they will fit our culture and they'll be able to adapt. We have a long onboarding process too. During the onboarding, we make sure that as people join the company, they don't, the culture doesn't shift too much, and they embrace the culture and get used to the way we work. And we also define clearly, okay, this is how it works at TIDS. This is your responsibilities, this is what you own, and this is how we communicate. So we have a lot of those things. And finally, on the organization side, even though we are 150 people, we have defined so we have feature teams, but we went a little bit further with what I would call, I like to call startup teams. Because the feature teams are also in relationship to marketing department, to sales department. And so the idea is that within a 1,200 people organization, the engineers have direct access to people that are completely maybe on the other side of the world in other markets. And so that also has helped kind of stay very close to the customer and do a small iteration while growing at our scale. I mean, just to give you some ideas, we ingest 100 billion events every day. We make 15 million requests per second and 18 million predictions per second. So we have a lot of this. And we also have a lot of product lines. So all that needs to exist and that the organization we are putting in place is designed for that.
And so what does it look like? How does a new product or a new feature, this sort of new startup squad get born inside of Teeds?
Yes. So I spend a lot of time working with the product and engineering leaders to define kind of the mission and the vision for each teams. And so that ideally the teams are independent to each other, so that autonomous. We heard earlier about autonomy. They are autonomous, and they collaborate each other on some transversal project to not reinvent the wheel all the time. And basically, once they realize they need to do some features in order to reach the objective based on the mission and the vision of the team, they would just start working on it like you would do in a small startup. You know, we have this product, we think we had this functionality, so we deploy 40 times a day in production. So we deploy in production, we see if it works, and then we adapt the code, and so it's very iterative process. Yeah. And as it starts to scale up, then we increase the scope of the project and the complexity, and we roll out market by market, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you really try to take like the minimum viable team to get something off the ground, maybe someone who's at the genesis of the idea, and then if the product gets traction and if you start to see it working, and as the engineering requirements grow, you expand the size of the team so that it grows. How quickly do you see like a new product or a new feature getting off the ground in that kind of environment?
Typically, we try to put first version of product in production like within a month. So we go very much by iteration, even if it's not completed. We test it as early as possible, collect feedback and adjust. And then eventually the big project takes maybe 6 months to get to production. And then you have a beta phase where we have some selected customer or partners that work with us. And then we do the press release, and then the whole thing takes off.
Yeah, and when we were talking about this before, I was saying, a cloud provider and ad tech actually operate very similarly in the sense that we have 40 plus products, and there's some overlapping relationships between them, but a lot of them operate very autonomously and have very autonomous revenue streams. That being said, what do you think, when you talk to other engineering managers and other VPs, what do you think? What about the model that you use at Teeds is applicable in other organizations? And what do you think is specific to the nature of the ad tech industry that has this sort of core engine that's ingesting data and processing events, and then has these subsets of revenue streams, video ads and retargeting ads and all that? Yeah. What do you think is applicable for other teams, and what do you think is specific to the way Teeds' industry operates?
Yes, I think. If you need to innovate in a market that is very competitive and changes very fast, and you have identified the people in your organization who want to grow. Maybe you talked earlier about retaining talents, and it's probably a good idea to pilot. I'm convinced that. You can roll this organization incrementally or so if you have the right people and they have a right mission. They are autonomous, so they can do the whole thing themselves. I think it's worth trying, since it helps a lot in very fast-changing environment. So that we designed it based on our context. So obviously, I don't believe in one-size-fits-all organization, but in our context, it works very well, and I think it can be applicable to others too.
Yeah, I remember when we were talking last week. I remember exactly where I was walking on the street. We were having a call. I was walking from my house to the office, and you said something to me, and I know where I was because it stuck with me. You said, Teeds is the kind of organization that operates really well in volatility, because you guys are constantly looking at. You said by default the money goes to the big guys. Yes. But whenever things change, like when a cookie, when Safari no longer accepts cookies, when IPs are no longer tracked, that's an opportunity for Teeds to come in and shake things up.
Exactly. So when you think about Teads customers, they are big brands. Yeah. They have big marketing budget, and at some point they don't want to take too much risk to go to Teads instead of Google or Facebook. You won't get fired if you go to Google or Facebook, but if you spend too much money on Teads, you may be in trouble. So the good news is, when there are big changes, such as Apple removing a lot of identities, which puts Facebook in trouble, and then in the Facebook you have changes. They are changing their feed algorithm, and there is fake news sometimes. So we play on all these topics to try to get the budget to us, and we love it when there is big changes in the industry, because we can find our way to say this is where the opportunity is right now. And for example, right now, Chrome is planning for the last 2 years to remove cookies completely, third-party cookies. They tried last year, and the UK stopped them because of the rest of the industry was not ready, and everybody would crash in terms of market. So they put 2 years more, but we were already ready back then. Yeah. So we want this to happen, because we think we can get a lot of the new, the new future revenue of the new norm, which is cookieless, and the new way, sustainable advertising. We have started to track carbon footprint. We are hitting some cloud API to figure out, okay, what is a carbon footprint, because at some point in the NASDAQ they'll need to report the carbon consumption. We are starting to invest in do brand wants to support professional journalism, or do they want to support generated content? And so that's why it's important also in our organization that engineering leaders really understand the market, and even engineers, so that they can innovate and make the best design and technical choice to take advantage of that. So I think if you're in an industry that has a lot of changes, it works.
Awesome. Well, I know we could talk about this for another 30 minutes, because we did just last week, but I really appreciate you coming out and talking a little bit about how the engineering structure at Teads operates. Let's give a huge round of applause to Jean-Baptiste.
Thank you.
Thank you. Whew. Thanks, buddy. Okay, gang. Everyone at home, everyone here at VivaTech. Before we, I was gonna say let's break, but we have, I guess, one last speaker on stage. Please give a warm round of applause to Skylar, the Scaleway mascot. Hello. Are you having a good time at VivaTech so far? Yeah. Have you been meeting with the engineering leaders too? Yeah, you meeting some people? Oh yeah, he's having a good time. Okay. Well, how about we go get some lunch, and we take a bit of a break, and we meet some of these good people and take some photos? Okay. I'm gonna go take a selfie with Skylar over there and have a good time. Thanks everybody for coming out this morning. We will be back in 1 hour. You can get the full agenda on the VivaTech app, and I will see you back here ASAP. Thank you very much.